is going on, everyone? Philly Insider Podcast. We are here 1 year after our Eagles Saints preview with Ross Jackson again. Ross, tell everyone how you're doing. I got all your links in the description. We got some new ones this year, too. I believe you have a new Twitter. You can talk a little bit about that. And I was watching some Saints All 22. I was just looking up some All 22 to prepare for the matchup. And I saw you were on Who Dat Confessional as well. So tell everyone a little bit about what you do, who you are, and just introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, man, we're trying to stay busy in these streets. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to stay busy. What's up, everybody? Ross Jackson here, host of the Locked On Saints podcast. You can also catch my writing over at Canal Chronicles, the SB Nation site, which covers the New Orleans Saints. And then also Tuesday, Thursday nights and post-game over at Who Dat Confessional on YouTube. Locked On Saints on YouTube now as well. Easiest way to keep up with all of that, though, is just to follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson. Nola, N-O-L-A.
Hey, you won't regret it. I got them post noties on. And also, I got them post noties on from Nick Underhill since you told me about him last year, too.
Yeah, that's my guy.
I'm in tune with the Saints community right now. It feels good. But, guys, I got to ask both of y'all. Sanjay, we'll start with you, and then, Ross, you can follow up. How are you guys feeling about your teams in this game? And then I'll finish up.
So this, to me, is a big momentum game in terms of the Eagles now got a big win over the Broncos, but can they keep that going? We've seen some big victories earlier in this year, but they've just been one-offs where the team put it all together for one game and then fell apart again. So are we going to start classifying this team under that where they can just get a win every once in a while? Or are we going to see them build on this momentum from the Broncos win, going against Ross? I've been saying this all season, man, but your Saints got multiple personality disorder, bro. They really do. They be playing like Super Bowl contenders one week and like they're going to be picking top 10 in the draft the next. So it also depends on which Saints team comes to play. But I'm really curious to see on the Eagles side, at least, will we build off of momentum or will we become more of a just here and there win team this season?
Sure. Look, I love it. Over here, when it comes down to New Orleans, you're right, man. This is a team that lacks an identity right now, and it's lacked a consistent identity over the course of the season. So you might call it a lack of identity, you might call it multiple personalities, however it is you want to look at it. The issue is that it has not been consistent, and that's what happens when you lose a quarterback partway through the season. You have a wide receiver that you've been sort of building your offense around, expecting to come back, and then all of a sudden, he ain't coming back no more. My bad, sorry. And then so he's out for the season. Then you end up missing a running back. Like look, it is not my place to come to Philadelphia Eagles folks and talk about injuries. Like, y'all get it. You get how it goes. And so when you have all that happening, it's tough. It's tough to develop that identity. So New Orleans Saints are in a place right now to where, they're down to effectively their third string quarterback because Taysom Hill was originally the second string guy that was going to take over after Jameis Winston. But of course, when Jameis Winston got hurt, Taysom Hill was in concussion protocol, 3 weeks of concussion protocol for the guy after a brutal hit that he took against the Washington football team, a team that I know you both know and probably dislike quite a bit over in the NFCs. And, so they ended up going to Trevor Siemian, and they've liked what they've gotten Trevor Siemian so far, but now you're starting to see sort of the ineptitude of the receiving core, the pass catchers, things like that, sort of stifling the offense. So this is a team that has built its identity. What has been consistent of it so far is that they are a run-first team or a run-heavy team, let me say it that way, that likes to rely on its defense. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So my general feeling about this game is that we'll see what happens when it comes into this one. But it is an important game for the New Orleans Saints as the Philadelphia Eagles have head-to-head wins over both NFC South, the Carolina Panthers, and the Atlanta Falcons, who the Saints are sure to be locked up with at the bottom of that playoff positioning in the wild and wacky, sort of unpredictable NFC playoff race.
Absolutely. Look, I'm feeling good about the Eagles coming into this game. Obviously, they're coming off of a win, had a tough loss to the Chargers, but played really well in that game. And it seems like they're trying to find their groove right now. And with the upcoming schedule, they might be able to. A lot of people are hoping this team's gonna run the table. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I think we can rack up 7 to 9 wins by the end of the year. We'll see, a lot of swing games in there, and this is certainly one that I think could go either way and could determine a lot in both these teams' fates in terms of wild card race this season. So I feel good about the Eagles going into this game versus last year. I remember I kind of felt the opposite, where it was like, all right, Jalen Hurts making his first start. I don't know what to expect. Me and Sanjay, I think if you had talked to us a week ago, Ross, and we were playing you guys last week, we would have felt the same way coming off the Chargers loss. We've been like, we just don't know where this team's at right now. We don't know what we have in Jalen Hurts, and we're not really sure where to go. Now Jalen Hurts coming off of what was arguably his best game of his career, and we're feeling, and the whole team played really well, so we're feeling a little bit better. But before we get into the in-depth of the matchup, I got to ask you about the injury report as always. So let me pull it up and share. I know I have the Wednesday injury report up, so I'm going to need some updates from you. If you have any from today, I'm not sure how much detail they gave or anything, but right here, obviously we've got some guys who did not practice on Wednesday. You talked about Taysom Hill. I know Passanio's on there. You got some important guys on there. So talk to us a little bit about what you're expecting and who's expected to play. I know it's a little earlier than we would normally give injury reports on, but what are you expecting right now, Ross?
Yeah, look, when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, they're not very open about injury and about game status until they absolutely have to be. I get questions all the time, like Sunday nights right after games, where people are like, oh, what's going to happen with this person? What'd you hear? It's like, find out on Wednesday when the injury report comes out. If they ain't required to say it, they ain't saying nothing. And so when it comes down to it, I mean, the key players to watch here are, of course, both of the tackles, left tackle Teron Armstead, who missed last week's game, as well as right tackle Ryan Ramczyk, who just popped up on the injury report on Wednesday. So we'll see how serious that is. And then you also want to keep an eye out on Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, like we mentioned, had gone through that concussion protocol over the course of 3 weeks, kind of straddling the bye week as a portion of that, by the way. Get into, this game up against the Tennessee Titans, gets nicked up a little bit. Now he's popped up with a foot injury. And so those are the 3 big players to watch that are currently DNP. We'll see what happens when the Thursday injury report comes out and if any of them are upgraded. If any of them are likely to be upgraded, it could be Taysom Hill. And at most, he would be upgraded to limited. I don't think you're going to see him pop back up to full. So definitely something to watch there. And then, of course, Alvin Kamara, who missed last week's game, he was upgraded to limited, dealing with a knee sprain. Him being limited on Wednesday is massively impressive because usually when it comes to running backs and knee sprains, you're talking about maybe a month out. So we'll see exactly how long Alvin Kamara is actually able to hang out throughout this week. But good to see him back at practice on Wednesday.
Gotcha. Well, going on to our side, and then I want to get into something you mentioned there. We don't have too much to update on. And again, so weird compared to last year. Like you said, we are not strangers to injuries in this city.
Yep.
Shout out the doctors, man. Shout out the doctors.
Yeah, honestly, man, the pre-med student here, gotta give the credit. But we've got guys who are rested. I mean, the only thing I think Goddard, he's got to get cleared before this game, which could be big because without Ertz, obviously, we're kind of thin at tight end. We've got guys who can do their secondary jobs, but not guys who are really trusting to go out there and be a major factor in the pass game. So other than that, I mean, a lot of guys are just resting right now. There's not really much I would say there is to update here. We'll kind of monitor that as the week goes. But I want to you talk about the tackles. So last week we faced the Broncos team that lost both of their starting tackles, and we were able to get some pressure. And from what I understand, I know a lot of people have complained about some guys in the interior. I know I've seen Cesar Ruiz has had some tough reps this year. So talk a little bit about, the Eagles pass rush. They've not been a very blitz-happy team, but against teams that the personnel kind of allows, and with your kind of wide receiver situation, having a backup quarterback in there, Gannon might start to go a little bit more aggressive. So what are you kind of looking for with this offensive line? How has their play been this year? How do they kind of match up with the Eagles? And Sanjay, you can kind of follow up with, going off of Gannon and just our personnel there right now.
Yeah, I'll mention real quick when it comes to the idea of being aggressive early, that's absolutely where the Philadelphia Eagles should go. Relaxing is where Trevor Siemian gets pretty comfortable, and the Saints offense can actually get some stuff going in the passing game. Around an 82 passer rating, quarters 1 through 3 of the last 2 games, both of his starts, but then in the fourth quarter up to 124, somewhere thereabouts in that fourth quarter in terms of his passer rating. Gets much, much better in the fourth quarter when the defenses are, protecting leads and kind of become a little bit less attack heavy and kind of sit back and just try to protect the lead. And so definitely want to be aggressive against this Saints offense, especially if both of these tackles are out, or even if just one of the tackles are out. Now, the Saints have dealt so far this season without 4 out of 5 offensive linemen. So far, Ryan Ramczyk is the only player that hasn't missed a game so far this season. And actually, Cesar Ruiz played out of position, but hasn't technically missed the game. So, losing somebody over on the left side. The Saints have been dealing with that all season from center out to left. James Hurst has stepped in and played extremely well at the left tackle spot. Calvin Throckmorton has stepped in at left guard. Andres Pete is out for the season. I think you'll see Throckmorton there throughout the rest of the season until Armstead comes back. Then you'll see Hurst shift back to that left guard position. The tricky part is that if they lose another tackle, which is where they don't have the depth like they have on the interior, is what do they do then? The only thing that maybe makes sense is that, of course, they go to maybe some of the guys at the bottom of the roster, like maybe Derek Kelly or somebody like that, maybe somebody off the practice squad, which is not going to be the greatest showing coming off of that side of the line in particular. Or you move Calvin Throckmorton, who's played a little bit of tackle out there, but hasn't played tackle at all in the NFL. So, it's 6 in one, half a dozen in the other at that point. So the Saints thin on the offensive line. The interior is usually the place that comes with a lot of concern. So you look at like Fletcher Cox being listed on that injury report. That's really important, something that Saints fans will definitely be keeping an eye out for. But still, that interior, Javon Hargrave, those guys are really phenomenal. And if this is a team for the New Orleans Saints that want to run the ball, I know that the Eagles just gave up 5.3 yards per carry last week up against the Broncos. But they got that defensive score. They got out to an early lead, and so that pushed the Broncos away from the run game. If that same thing replicates here in terms of rhythm, which matches with the Saints' slow starts they've had so far this season, then that's going to push them away from the run game as well. Then you go from the run blocking situation to pass blocking and trying to protect Trevor Siemian, and that can get a little challenging.
I got you, Ross. And trust me, I don't disagree with anything you said. But see, there's one thing which I want to notice you said over and over. It's if we can get aggressive, if we can get out to the lead, if we can replicate those things. And if there's one thing, I'll use my own if here. If there's one thing I've seen this season, it's that Gannon loves to just ride with 4, man. He does not like blitzing. He doesn't like sending an extra guy, no linebacker, nothing fancy, no stunts. He just likes his rush with 4, play the cover 2, and see what happens. And I got to be honest, for your team, I just don't know how well that's going to work because you said it best. Siemian loves sitting back in coverage. He loves taking what the defense just gives him and slowly going at it. He doesn't like having to deal with the pressure in his face.
Right.
And to be honest, Gannon's defense is kind of like suited for that, just not giving you much pressure. Now, our front 4, maybe in the past, it could have done more with Gannon's style. But our front 4 is showing a bit of age now, my man. Fletcher Cox is not the same guy he used to be. Derek Barnett comes with penalties with every good play he has. And, even Hargrave started off very hot for this season, but he's cooled down a bit given the past few weeks. And he also plays on the interior where it's harder to generate pressure.
Yes.
So, this is all about what Gannon's mindset is going to be coming into this game. But so far throughout, what is it now? We're in week 11. Through 10 weeks of the season, I haven't seen Gannon change his mindset once. He's gotten bailed out by a few good defensive plays, some offensive penalties in the red zone last week, especially with the Broncos, helped make the defense look very good. But I need to see Gannon's mindset change before I trust this defense to be more aggressive. I think they have the capability, like you said, but it's obviously not going to happen until Gannon decides that it's going to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you just look at Gannon. A lot of the times, like you said, Sanjay, with playing that cover 2 or just too high in general, obviously you're keeping a guy out of the box. And just with, this team, even when we have an extra guy in the box, when we're playing single high, it's still tough for us to stop the run at times. We just are not the run defense we quite used to be. We have guys who are like Davion Taylor is really just learning, and he's getting better. He forced that fumble on the 4th down last week. That was huge. And that allowed for that defensive touchdown to happen with Slay. And
Teddy Bridgewater, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Come on, Ross. Don't do him like that.
I love Teddy Bridgewater.
Like
that's my dude. New Orleans Saints legend Teddy Bridgewater. But he just said, "Nah, I'm cool."
Exactly.
Hey, bro, that's a business decision. He chose to live another down.
Yeah, he's got history, man. He's seen some stuff. I don't blame him.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with both of y'all. I think this could be a big deciding factor in the game is just, how the Saints run game operates and whether the Eagles can get out to that early lead. Because I think the Eagles offense is starting to figure a lot out, which we'll get to in a bit. But, also, I mean, we talked about Trevor Siemian. Before we get there, I just got to mention one thing, Ross. Special teams we love, obviously. But, man, the fullback, Alex Arma, my guy. I mean, this dude just on the little play action leaks or whether he's blocking. I mean, I know Panthers fans are still talking about how mad they are they let go of this guy. So I haven't watched a ton of him, but from what I understand, he's been pretty good for y'all. So I want to let you talk about him real quick because we got to show the fullbacks. Last year was Michael Burton. This year it's Alex Armour. We got to show the fullbacks some love, man.
Listen, I love some fullbacks, man. You said you got the post note he's on, so you see every game. I find some opportunity to tweet out fullback season because these fullbacks come through and make these plays, man. No, I absolutely love it, and they've been using him as a lead blocker as well. Some of that old school I formation, which kind of hurts to call that old school now, but hey, it is. And then the opportunity that they continue to use him in those short yardage situations as well as a receiver. You mentioned the sort of fullback leaks off of the play actions and things like that. I mean, they love using this guy. And look, Alex Armour is a former linebacker as well, so he has a ton of agility, and he's somebody that they can really utilize and just work to get the ball in his hands. And they use him in those short yardage situations, but they're not afraid to use him on a 2nd and 10, 1st and 10 as a receiving weapon or as an option and stuff. And so I love what Alex Armour brings to the game. I love that the Saints are still one of those teams that continues to use a fullback and not only just have them present for blocking, but get them involved in the game plan. And Arma has the ability and the talent to be able to continue to do that for sure.
We love that. We love that. Well, now moving on to Trevor. I did keep putting this up because I saw this is from your tweet, Ross, so I got to give you credit. But man, this guy, Trevor Slinging, man. I mean, this dude has just been, I'd say he's been pretty impressive the past few weeks. Like, I have been thoroughly surprised with how he's played. And there's been a good number of drops. There's been, talking about just the flip here between these teams, like the offensive line rotations for you guys, which we had last year. Even like I said, like the lack of discipline at times I know has been an issue for us this year. And I believe for you guys as of late, but Trevor has definitely exceeded my expectations, I think, in the games he's played. So it does come down to a lot of what Gannon does. What have you kind of seen from him in terms of optimism, in terms of things you want to see him get better at? And Sanjay, you can kind of lead into like how our back end has played this year, and we'll get into the weapons after that as well.
Yeah, look, Trevor Siemian or Trevor Slinging, the reason why I gave him that nickname is because, look, he came in, he threw 29 passes in that game that he, came in relief of Jameis Winston. And look, I covered that game. I was at that game, and that was to have all the energy sucked out of the building the way that it was when Jameis went out, and then to have that game go the way that it went against Tampa Bay Buccaneers was just an absolutely incredible experience. But it was spooky season. It was on Halloween. Things have relegated, since then and everything. And so, then they threw 41 passes with him the very next week, and then they threw 34 again with him up against the Tennessee Titans. So they're not afraid to go out there and throw with Trevor Siemian. Now, some of it is that they've also been trailing and having to dig themselves out. They had to score 22 straight points just to lose to the Atlanta Falcons 2 weeks ago. And so they've been in those situations where they've had to dig themselves out of those holes. And so when those defenses back up and everything, it helps. What it is that I think that works really well for Trevor Siemian going into this week, just like last week, is that, you mentioned that cover 2, and they tend to play a lot of cover 2 zone in particular in Philly. And those zone heavy schemes work really well for Trevor Siemian, who wants to be able to find those receivers in the pocket. He does a really good job, or excuse me, not in the pocket, but, find the holes in the zone from the pocket. He does a really good job getting ball, his ball placement's very nice. He can do all of that. But the big thing is is he able to handle the pressure? That's what we just haven't been able to really see him do so far. And I don't just mean the pressure of defensive linemen in his face. If you can see that those defensive backs are in attack mode and they're looking to jump routes, they're looking to jump passes and all of that, he tends to get a little bit more conservative. Trevor Siemian is not going to strike fear in the hearts of people, but he has performed extremely well as a distributor. So you look at his pass chart, he gets that ball all around the field. He even had 6 different passes beyond 20 yards or air yards. Now, I know I'm talking to talking about the team where Jalen Hurts just threw the longest air yards completion of the week last week, over 49 yards. So respect. But, look, if you can get him past 20 with Trevor Siemian, I think you're pretty happy about that. And Trevor Siemian is not afraid at all to take those shots down the field. So I think that there is a little bit less reservation when it comes to Siemian than there was with Winston, who wanted to tick back his interceptions, who wanted to be a little bit more of a game manager. He was kind of changing his play style, so maybe overcompensated a little bit in situations where he could have been more aggressive. And obviously nobody's getting the ball down the field like Jameis Winston could. But when you have Trevor Siemian, who's just kind of like, whatever, I'll go out there and throw this ball and see what happens, I think that you actually benefit from that in attack mode. The tricky part is getting the wide receivers on the same page. The Saints right now have had only one receiver all season, one pass catcher, all season that has had over 100 receiving yards in a game, and it was Alvin Kamara against the Seattle Seahawks. They haven't done it with the tight end. They haven't done it with the wide receiver. It's only been done with the running back, who might not even play this weekend. So Saints have to get that figured out. Part of that is chemistry. Part of that is understanding, who's going to be where, when, getting spacing right with these receivers that have often jumbled sometimes in situations and brought a bunch of defensive backs into a similar area of the field where you can't throw the ball anymore. So there have been some things there that have caused some issues in the passing game, but it all has to start with the quarterback. So how risky is Trevor Siemian willing to be this weekend against a team that is essentially flipped when it comes to defense? You talk about the Philadelphia Eagles saying that's a strong run defense, but you can pass against them. Now it kind of feels the opposite way, and that might cause the Saints a little bit of trouble. But Trevor Siemian, if he's going to go out there and sling him, he's going to sling him. Ain't nobody changing his mind.
Hey, Ross, I mean, you couldn't have said it better. Honestly, the entire way the league looks at our team has just entirely flipped. You go back and our defensive line was a force, like one of the top 10, 5 in the league. And our secondary was absolutely terrible. I got a little background noise. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Our defensive scheme has entirely flipped. And you look at the names Hunter's got down there. Darius Slay. Oh my goodness. One of the best Eagles cornerback of my lifetime, possibly. In that I've been since at least the last decade, I think. I can't think of a better corner over the last decade.
I'm thinking like Lito Shepherd, Trevor.
Yeah, that's
Troy
not my
Vincent.
lifetime.
That's
not my lifetime. But
Asante Samuel. There we go.
There you go.
Lito and,
of the last
Lito and
decade.
Sheldon Brown were something else, man.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's throwing it back. But
Reggie Bush remembers that.
Best corner of the last best corner of the last decade. And Steven Nelson, to me, one of the best pickups of the entire offseason. I was singing this guy's praises in the preseason. Bad. Man, he's been so technically sound. Yeah, he'll give up a catch here and there, but it's usually something underneath or whatever where you're just like, fine, just give him that route. He's solid. And then Maddox, absolutely. Hunter, I give you your props on this one. You were 100% right. Maddox was always meant to be a slot corner. He was never meant to play on the outside, but in that nickel position, man, he has found his space. This guy is making plays out there week after week from that nickel corner spot. So, our secondary is something, man. And like you mentioned, your receivers are kind of struggling right now. And let's see, how well can they play? How much tight coverage can they play? Because one thing that I think, again, I'm going to harsh on Gannon a bit, the cover two kind of, I guess you could say, minimizes the role of the corners, at least, in that their whole idea is basically just go deep, cover deep, make sure that you don't give up anything like that. And it kind of takes away from their ability, especially for these guys, for them to lock up individual people because they just have to play their responsibilities.
Right.
So then you end up with teams just targeting over the middle of the field where obviously they can't go because that's where your linebackers and your safeties, two positions we have had holes at this year, are responsible for. So, can we Gannon let these guys do their specialties and just get up in receivers' grills, cover them tight, or will he just drop them into responsibilities in his own, which honestly I don't believe plays to their strengths that much.
Yeah.
So
and that would play to the Saints receiver strengths, honestly. I mean, you look at their top two or really top three receivers in Traquan, well, not in that order. It would be Deontay Harris, Marquez Callaway, and then Traquan Smith. But you look at those top three receivers, and at least 70% of their receiver production has come against zone coverage. It's remarkable. I mean, these guys have performed extremely well against zone coverage because that allows the New Orleans Saints scheme to work in their favor, right? Whereas opposed to when it's just man on man, that it really kind of comes down to one-on-one. Can this person beat that person? And now Deontay Harris showed last week, hey, I figured out some things. He's becoming a little bit more of a complete receiver, especially a guy at his stature where people don't expect a complete receiver that way. But we both know very well that stature doesn't limit players if you look at guys like Darren Sproles and others. But when you look at what it is that this New Orleans Saints team has been able to do in terms of scheme and creating, so with route concepts and route combinations, they're really good at scheming that up and finding ways to get their receivers open against zone coverage. They found some ways against man coverage. A lot of, I'm setting up to block. Now I'm just playing, and then taking like the harsh angle toward the outside and things like that. So it's all got to be scheme driven. So that's why a guy like Deontay Harris really settling in, a guy like Traquan Smith coming back healthy and having 4 years of experience in the system, 3 years of experience in the system is so important, because the scheme can do all it wants, but you have to be able to run it. You have to understand what the calls are. You have to know what your responsibilities are. So if it came down to offensive responsibilities versus defensive responsibilities, that could work in the Saints' favor. But if it came down to pure receiver, capability and ability versus corner ability and capability, that might work in the Eagles' favor.
Yeah. Hey, look, I mean, this is definitely a big part of the game. We saw last week Gannon at times would go press coverage, and it worked very well. And I think, a lot of times the only throw you're going to have, when you're, especially when you're playing Saban's cover one, is that comeback route. And, it comes down to Trevor Siemian hitting that comeback route, but also, like you said, Ross, like, can those wide receivers run it well? And I think I saw in the Buccaneers game a few weeks ago, there was one play where he threw it to Marquez Callaway, but they couldn't quite connect. So there's been instances like that before, but yeah, I mean, even if Gannon wants to go cover two, will he go cover two man at times and just make it a little more difficult on these guys? So, I mean, look, we've had Kevin White catching passes out here this year. We had Chris Hogan catch a touchdown pass. Like, this is definitely, I will say it is very refreshing to know going into this game, we're not going to have to worry about Emmanuel Sanders going up against Kayvon Seymour or, practice squad player 1A or 1B or what, you named the Eagles guys who have played corner over the past 10 years. Even Jalen Mills, like, I don't miss him one bit, so it's definitely, like Sanjay said, like, it comes down to, the Eagles get aggressive. And like you said, Ross, like, can the Eagles get aggressive and make these Saints receivers win? Like you said, Deontay Harris starting to figure things out, like a guy who's just a natural playmaker. Like, I remember we talked about him last year in the special teams section, but now he's become an integral part of this offense. And
he's their most consistent. He's their most consistent pass catcher right now. I mean, outside of Alvin Kamara, it's Deontay Harris, and you have a couple of other guys that are finding their way. But I mean, you're right. Like, we talked about Deontay Harris last year as a special teamer. Now we have to respect him as a receiver.
Absolutely. And going along with that, Sanjay hinted at it. Our linebackers and safeties have been an issue here, and this is kind of what I want to finish up on with the Eagles defense. They've had some trouble. You can see Sanjay right now. They've had some trouble, and we gotta love the reactions. But TJ Edwards has found his home as that middle linebacker, as the mainstay there. But at the same time, because of his athleticism, he is limited in what he can do in pass coverage. You saw him and Rodney McLeod last week give up a big catch to Albert O. I'm not going to try to say his last name, the tight end for the Broncos, Akobunum or something. I did try to say his name, but everyone knows who he is. And he's a solid backup. He made a big catch against those two guys who blew coverage. And Davion Taylor, again, like I said, like, natural athlete, but still learning the game because of his background. And, you have Anthony Harris, who came over here, who we really thought was going to be a really nice addition to that secondary, and just hasn't quite seemed like he's going to be able to get back to those couple years where he was, quite frankly, elite in Minnesota. I mean, maybe if you want to take him a notch down from that, but he was really, really good regardless. That's going to be tough. Now, I know you guys, haven't exactly had the most tight end success this year. Obviously Troutman, he can make the run blocks a lot of the time, but I've seen a lot of fans complain about him on Twitter. I know Juwan Johnson was a healthy scratch recently. Hey, shout out Garrett Griffin, got a couple catches versus the Buccaneers that one game.
My guy.
But another role player type of guy. We love him. But against the Eagles, we always worry, like, are guys going to find their groove and get going against these safeties and linebackers? And also, going along with that, we talked about the trenches a little bit. AK, we talked about him a ton in this pod. Obviously, he's just a monster. And you got Mark Ingram back in there. The duo is back this year. What do you guys kind of expect in terms of these matchups with the linebackers and safeties and the run game, the tight ends? What are you guys both expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I'll use the same kind of thought process that I use with Carson Wentz going to Indianapolis, which was that if there's a place where it's going to work out for these tight ends in this instance, it could be against this defense, right? I don't have really any confidence in Carson Wentz at all, but if there's a place where he's going to work out, Indy felt like it was the place that it could happen if it was going to happen. So I look at the tight ends in this game and I'm like, I don't have a lot of confidence in these tight ends right now, just in terms of, like you're talking about one guy that changed positions, another guy that's been a perennial practice squad player, another guy who's in the second year of his time coming into the NFL, and then another guy that's been on injured reserve the entire season, Nick Vanette, will probably be active this week because they need to try something different at tight end. So I don't have a ton of confidence in the tight ends. I don't think anyone does, but if it's going to work out against anybody, it might be this Philadelphia Eagles defense that continuously struggles against tight ends. So it's a good matchup to build some confidence, perhaps like a get right game in that way. And if the Saints are, and the Saints are smart because it is Sean Payton, I would expect that, hey, regardless of what has happened before this game, they're probably going to try to attack over the middle of the field with these tight ends that maybe haven't instilled the most confidence in a fan base or in the organization to an extent. It doesn't matter though. Like for them, this is the matchup that they can win. And we'll see if Taysom Hill is able to get involved. Then they'll probably utilize him. There it was at tight end a bunch so that they can attack the middle of the field with him as well. So I think that's absolutely what you're going to see. And if it's not going to be with the tight ends, definitely expect them to attack the middle of the field with Alvin Kamara. If he's available in the passing game, they'll run those Texas routes, those angle routes. They'll line him up in the slot, have him go across the field, run some mesh concepts, some stuff that's going to create some confusion and some congestion over the middle of the field. The NFL is a copycat league. The Titans did all of that to perfection against the Saints last week. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Saints employ some of that this week against a similar a defense that's struggling in similar ways where it is struggling, right? So I could see them absolutely taking some of that. And look, when it comes down to getting Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara paired up, it's more than just what happens on the field, right? It's the energy that comes to this offense when you're in a situation where you're dealing with all these injuries. You have all of these players that are gone. You bring back Mark Ingram back to this city. He comes in 3 weeks later, breaks the franchise record for most rushing yards for the franchise and everything. It's an incredible story. It's awesome. And having him and Alvin Kamara back in the facility together, you can feel it. So I think that that's the thing that I would shout out beyond the on-field production, because Mark Ingram had a fantastic game last week in place of Alvin Kamara, but even beyond the on-field production, what that brings to this team from an energy perspective, from a charge perspective, is really important as well.
I got you, Ross. And first off, like you said, if it's going to happen, it's going to probably happen this week for your tight end. Man, like Hunter mentioned Davion. Davion's been coming along really well in the run game. He's got a lot of good instincts. The issue is instincts absolutely don't help you in the pass game as a linebacker. As a linebacker, what you need is discipline. You need technique. You need to be able to judge depth, know what your responsibilities are. And that's all head game and experience, which Taylor does not have to this point in his career. So I can't even hold that against him. It's basically setting him up to fail if you send him into the pass game coverage at this point. And then you go to Alex Singleton, a guy who I was high on coming into the season, who has just not been it. He's regressed in terms of his ability to stop the run. He's not hitting the holes as hard. He's not getting to his responsibilities as fast. When it comes to pass coverage, the man is just consistently too shallow, not getting enough depth in any way. I mean, you can go back and look at any number of plays. It's clearly his responsibility on a good number of crossers as one of those middle linebackers, and he just doesn't get back. He just sits maybe within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and that's not deep enough for that cover too. So, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Then
I believe that's definitely something that they'll try to attack too. They love those just slightly deeper overs more than the drag routes. They'll go for those over routes. And so that would definitely be something to watch for sure if you're a Philadelphia fan.
Yes. And then you look at TJ Edwards. He's been great in the run game. I'll give him that. And he has improved a little bit in pass coverage. My point being, it's still by no means his specialty. No one is ever going to accuse TJ Edwards of being an excellent pass coverage guy. It's just not his thing. So that really is the space you want to attack. And even in terms of our safeties have been okay this year. I think I expected more from Anthony Harris coming into the season. He's been passable, but maybe I'm also just a bit jaded by how well Steven Nelson worked out, but I really feel like Harris hasn't had much of an impact this year. Like, not much at all. I believe he had one. I can remember his name being called for some big play like once earlier in the year.
He had an interception that was kind of an arm punt.
So,
no.
my point being, like, it's been underwhelming. Let me say it that way. And, maybe that's a good thing. You always say that about defensive backs. If you don't hear their name, it's a good thing. But I just haven't seen him making any plays either, or seen him doing any specifically really good coverage. He's just kind of been there. And also, I feel people blatantly targeting the shallow middle of our field, like you mentioned, about 10 yards out of the line, has also made him look a little bit better. Because then he doesn't have to cover anybody. He just has to make a tackle.
Yeah.
So, that middle of the field is definitely something you guys should look to exploit. And again, that's one of those things where you look for Gannon to change things up eventually. Don't just leave these guys in a scheme where you're not playing to any of their strengths. Like I mentioned, for a lot of these linebackers, they're not meant to be dropping back into coverage. Sometimes you get guys like Derek Barnett back in coverage. Man, Ross, you can't tell me you look at Derek Barnett and you see this guy belongs in pass coverage. What?
Man, listen. We've seen it all. We've seen Cam Jordan in coverage. We've seen Marcus Davenport in coverage. We saw Sheldon Rankins in coverage. Like those fire blitzes, yo. Like they'll run them. They'll run them in. It doesn't matter if you're David Onyemata or you're a linebacker. Like they'll get you in coverage eventually. I know. I feel what you're saying to my core.
The point being, like, I really this all comes back once again to Gannon. I've said his name for every defensive position we talked about. But it's because when we talk about these positions, we talk about what their strengths and weaknesses are. And ain't it the job of the coordinator, Ross, to play to your players' strengths and weaknesses? Ain't that the job to adjust so that way you can get the best out of the guys you got? And I just don't feel the Gannon's going to change that. I feel like he's going to leave them in a position where they're vulnerable. All the weaknesses I just talked about will probably be on display this weekend. And it's really just up to your guys. Can they take advantage of it? Like you mentioned, this is going to be weakness versus weakness, with the exception of your running backs, which are fantastic. That'll be just strength versus weakness. But yeah, that's all I got to say on this part. The middle of the field is a problem.
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, I mean, I think something that Gannon, especially like you said with those crossers, Ross, like if they're going to go trips with the Saints and try to run one of those crossers with the number 3 receiver, bringing a safety down to cover that rather than having your Mike linebacker carry that across the field. Yeah. That's something that the Eagles, that cannot happen for us. Right. It's not going to work with TJ Edwards, but yeah, I mean, I completely agree with both of you guys. And, Singleton's become more of a blitzer at this point. And you talk about fire zone. I mean, we've seen Fletcher Cox drop back into QB spies and stuff like Sanjay said. Like, it's just been like, and the thing is, like, we have guys like Jannard Avery and Pat Johnson who can play like that, that pass rusher / like hybrid coverage guy to the flat, but they're not being used that way. And we're using these other guys, like you said, like a Sheldon Rankins, like, I don't know. But anyway, you talked about mesh concepts. And last year, I remember you specifically saying with the Saints defense, that was something they were very good at stopping. So I want to turn it over to that side of the ball with Dennis Allen and everything. First off, before we get there, got to say, hey, glad about this. No CJ, no ejections for the Eagles. That's always a concern when you play the Saints. You always got to worry about that. So God bless our souls. We won't have to worry about this game. But I want to talk. First thing I want to get to with the Saints defense is the Eagles have run like a lot of 13 personnel, heavy tight end sets as of late. They went, more to the balanced attack last week, but they've been very run heavy. And obviously you guys have arguably the number 1 run defense in the league right now. You got bodies up there. You got guys who are very good in the pass rush, especially up there too. But obviously, the mainstays we talk about, like Demario Davis, you talk about Cam Jordan, and you have breakouts too. Like, obviously, Davenport, we talked about him last year. It seemed like he was really coming on, and he's played really well from my understanding this year. Passanio comes in and gets 4 sacks. I mean, and I'm sure you can talk about plenty of the guys, who I didn't even mention. Even safety, I'm sure Malcolm's come up and help and run support at times. But, guys in there, talk about this defense, Dennis Allen's philosophy, and how you think they're going to try to match up with the Eagles' current scheme and what the Eagles, if the Eagles are going to get forced into the pass, what's it going to look like?
Yeah, well, I'm happy that you brought up the 13 personnel situation because the Saints haven't really faced a lot of 13 personnel. It's only 12 plays on defense that they faced against that particular, very heavy 3 tight end group. The thing about it is that 98% of the time, those have been run plays. And I think that makes a ton of sense. Outside of maybe the New Orleans Saints, not a lot of teams are going to run many passing plays out of 13 personnel. The trick of it is that if you look at the success rate in terms of defending 13 personnel runs, the Saints have allowed a success rate of only 9% on those runs. So they're shaping up to be in a good matchup there in terms of defending the run against those heavy sets. Where it becomes an issue for them is in the red zone, and particularly in goal to go situations up against the goal line, because that sets up these offenses to be able to run like these play action Y leaks, which the Saints continuously have struggled against. And I mean, that has been like years that they've been struggling with that up at the goal line, because they commit to the run, because that's what the play call is, right? The play call is commit to the run, play run first always. And so in those cases, that has caused them some grief. So that's where I would really watch for those heavy tight end sets to be deployed against the Saints and potentially cash in, because it could equal a red zone touchdown for you. The Saints were the number one red zone defense going into the game against the Atlanta Falcons, allowing only 44% of possessions in the red zone to go for touchdowns. Then they allowed 3 red zone touchdowns against the Falcons and 2 against the Titans. They did well against the Titans. It's not a bad conversion rate. Maybe save a bad roughing the passer penalty might have turned that to only 1 red zone touchdown allowed. But regardless, it's 2 on the charts now, because they had several plays after that to stop them. There was another penalty later, and then the tight end sort of Y leak situation got the Titans into the end zone. So the Saints have continued to struggle there. So when it comes to the Saints defense matching up against Philly's offense in these heavy personnels, I think they'll do fine against it in the run game, but up in those goal to go situations up against the goal line, that's probably where they might find themselves struggling a little bit, particularly in the play action game.
Yeah, and real quick, before I let you go, Sanjay, too, I mean, a big thing that I saw with the Colts offense before, when I was, looking at what Sirianni might bring over, was that he would release a lot of those tight ends on those delays or those leaks, like you said. Haven't seen it a ton this year just because the offense has kind of been all over the place. But, there have been occasions on which he's run it. So if Goddard's in, hopefully that's something we can attack with him. Because like I said, we are thin behind him. So that might even affect how we play things with Jack Stoll, who did look pretty good last week, but then you got Tyree Jackson, who's the quarterback converted tight end, who is our third string right now. But sorry to interrupt you, Sanjay.
No, you're good. Ross, the 13th personnel is such a key part of our offense, man. And it all stems from, I talked about hoping Gannon will adjust. I'll give Sirianni his flowers, joke intended, in that he has finally started listening to what the city has been yelling at him since week 2. Like the first quarter. Run the ball, man. Like, he has finally figured out that this team has an offensive line, which, while our backups, and currently right now we don't have the whole line all the way healthy, they're a bit nicked up. But he's figured out that while they can't necessarily always get back for that long pass coverage, and especially with Jalen Hurts back there, you never know where he's going to end up in the pocket. So that's a whole different thing to consider when you're pass coverage and you're in pass blocking. But instead, they just let them run, man, and they can get up there. They can move guys off the ball. And against a very good Broncos D-line, minus Von Miller, I am aware, but still against a very good Broncos D-line, they managed to move guys off the ball and just get chunk plays, get us into short third down situations, manageable third downs, manageable second downs. That's another key thing. Don't even let it get to third down. Just make it happen in 2 plays. And Jordan Howard, man's a tank. He's doing his thing. I mean, Boston Scott, you get him in there for a little bit of change of pace. He's still quick with it. And heaven knows when we play the Giants, we'll need him.
Might come back for that stiff arm on Malcolm this week.
Woof.
True. Oh, my goodness. Shout out. Don't do that, Hunter. We love Malcolm Jenkins here on this podcast. Don't do that. Don't do that. We love Malcolm.
We stand Malcolm.
But we do stand Malcolm. But my point being, this offense has just taken such a shift over the past few weeks, going run heavy. And this is going to be immovable object, unstoppable force, which is going to give. We've been converting our offense to go full run personnel, the 13 personnel, just in terms of play calling, less RPOs, less passing, making Jalen more comfortable in that he doesn't really have to throw 50 times a game now. And you got your run defense going. Guys are getting up to their gaps. They're exploding off the line, making quick moves, holding their gaps. Who's going to give? Somebody's going to give in this matchup. We're going into this matchup knowing what both teams are going to try to do. Who's going to give first? And then after, somebody is going to have to give. That's inevitable. What happens after that? Which team is going to adjust? That's what I'm curious for, in which I don't really know how to speak on yet, because adjustments are something you can never really determine preemptively. For Sirianni, I have yet to actually see him. I can't speak. We obviously know what Sean Payton can do. That's not a question. His pedigree is unquestioned at this point. It's established. He's a master when it comes to adjusting. For Sirianni, that'll be a good test. If the run offense can't hold versus your defense, can Sirianni adjust? Can he find ways to still keep the run involved while taking the offense a bit more to the outside? And I do have to go soon, Ross. I'm just going to leave with this now because I got my class coming up at 4. Got to get over there. Got to walk over there. So I'm just going to end off on this. Going to give my score prediction real fast, Hunter, and then also what I think will be the player of the game. So the score I'm going to say is 26-22. I'm going to say, no, 26-23. I'll say it'll be within a field goal. And I will take the Eagles in this. I'm taking the Eagles, Ross. I'm doing it.
It's okay.
And my player of the game, which I'm going to say will have to be, I think it's going to have to be Hargrave. I think Hargrave's got to get home. I think he's got to hold pressure in the middle. Now, if not to just get to Trevor Siemian, to get into that run game, to be able to limit you guys there. I'm going to take Hargrave as my player of the game. And guys, this offense is all going to go. I'll leave off on one last note. This offense is all going to go on how Jalen Hurts plays. Hunter mentioned it at the start of this pod. Last week, he had the best game of his career, in my opinion. Can he be more of that? Or was that just a blip? That's another key thing to watch for during this game. Ross, it was great to see you, man.
Hey, man.
Hunter, sorry I got a dip, but
All
love
good.
being a part of this. And I will see y'all later. Ross, we might see you again in the future. Year flew by.
Hopefully.
Maybe we'll see you down the line again.
Gotta get the playoffs this year or something.
True.
Yeah, possible.
Anyway,
I appreciate you,
have
buddy.
a
Good
good
to see
one,
you, man.
guys. Good to see you, too.
Thank you, Sanjay. Well, I can't provide the same energy that man provides during our weekly pod. I mean, Sanjay is just the man. I wouldn't do this preview show with anyone else. But, Ross, if it's okay with you, I got a couple more things I want to ask you about the Saints.
Yeah, I got like 10 minutes. We're good.
Perfect. So, well, first off, I want to shout out Pete Werner. That was one of my guys during the draft process. And, if you want to talk on him for a little bit, go for it. But I also want to ask you, last year, when, again, going back to our preview pod last year, Jalen Hurts made his starting debut. Obviously, we'd seen him before, but it was his first NFL start, and we didn't know what to expect. And they ran a lot of zone read, a lot of misdirection that game, and they just kept that front off balance. And 1 year later, we're here after, like Sanjay said, best game of his career. He was really good as a passer last week, minus a couple throws in the second half, but they didn't really throw very much in the second half to get him in a rhythm anyway. But you guys on the back end, obviously, run defense has been great. Pass coverage, I can't really speak to that as much as you'll be able to, but I know it hasn't been as great as the run defense. And talking about these cornerbacks, and now speaking of another rookie along with Werner, Paulson Adebo's been playing out there a little bit. I know you have PJ Williams back there, Marcus Williams back there. You got some dudes back there, but also there's some concerns at times. There's some occasional mistakes. I know Lattimore's on one side, and just with Hurts in the past game, like Sanjay said, he is getting a little bit better at his pocket presence, which is what we like to see. A lot of times he just be in the pocket, look 5 different ways to run when it's a clean pocket, and we were like, no, you can just stand in there and just wait for things to develop a little bit. But it's been better. Our wide receiver play from Devontae has been great, in recent weeks. Quez Watkins has been a guy who's been rolling. He did have a drop touchdown last week, but he's been getting open a lot of the time, getting separation.
It was a beautiful throw, though.
Absolutely beautiful throw. You are spot on with that. So talking about Jalen Hurts and this Eagles passing attack that I think Hurts, like Sanjay said, is going to have to make some big throws in this game to win it, like he did have to last week as well. What are you kind of expecting in terms of the passing attack from both sides on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I think one of the things to watch is how the threat of the mobile quarterback changes and opens up the passing game. And what I mean by that is that the Saints love to play man coverage on defense. They love for their corners to be in man. I mean, they're loaded with man coverage corners, and that has been a huge part of what their success has been so far this season. However, when you have a mobile quarterback and you run man on defense, you have an entire defense that's turning their back to the quarterback, and that can be very, very dangerous. So the threat of the mobile quarterback in Jalen Hurts could force the Saints to play a little bit more zone, which puts them outside of their, no pun intended, but comfort zone. So it puts them in a situation to where they might have to operate outside of their strengths because of the fact that inherently their strength could potentially work against them with Jalen Hurts under center. So that would definitely be a big part of this game to watch. Where the Saints have performed extremely well is that they don't give up many big, deep air yardage completion passes. They haven't really given up many of those big plays that are, 40, 50 yards through the air, 30, 40 yards through the air. There have been a couple, don't get me wrong. I mean, you look at the Saquon Barkley touchdown against the Giants. You look at the Kadarius Toney touchdown against the Giants. Like, those were big. But for the most part, if you look at the 20-plus yard plays, 40-plus yard plays that they've given up, it's been catch and run situations. Yards after catch for this defense have been a big issue, particularly in zone coverage. So that would be a big part that I would be watching. If the threat of Jalen Hurts being a runner forces the Saints to play more zone coverage, then they have to play a more disciplined zone coverage than they've shown that they can play so far this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think – go back to the Chargers game, even like they got a little aggressive. They went, more of a blitz heavy approach. They zero blitzed Jalen a couple times, and of course he just evaded and then goes out to the side and just gets a first down and flips for one of them, which was just wild. But I mean, that is something you have to consider when you have Jalen back there, is that even though you want to make him beat you with his arm, his mobility kind of helps in that aspect. So I completely agree on that. So that was really all I wanted to touch on. Shout out my gunner, Andre Chachere, this year, and Zach McPherson, those gunners. We don't have Rudy Ford anymore. He's actually become an integral part of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Shout out him. Nice. It's like seeing a son grow up. I mean, I miss him so much, but I believe Justin Hardy got paid this offseason as well.
That's exactly what I was thinking about while you said that. I was like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, Justin Hardy showed up in New Orleans, became a star as a special teamer, opened a Papa John's, and then headed over with a new contract to New York. It's fantastic. Fantastic.
Oh, I got hold on.
Yep.
I got so excited that I knocked my cord out of my headphone there. I was getting so hyped on special teams, man. But hey, shout out those couple of guys though, man. We appreciate Gunners here on the Philly Insider podcast and with Ross as well and everything he does. Special teams pod here. But hey, I want to thank you for your time, and let's get into the score and player of the game prediction. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to follow up with Sanjay. I feel like since me and Sanjay last year, we always picked the Eagles to lose. But now since we're picking the Eagles to win this year, I'm like, this could go the other way on us. Like, this could completely flip around and we could just look really stupid. So, but I am going to take the Eagles this week. I think their pass rush is going to be able to get home and make Trevor Siemian a little uncomfortable. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be composed, and the Eagles offense is going to be able to find their groove, and even if they get stopped a little bit, they're going to be able to find a way to move the ball down the field. I think Sirianni is growing and developing as well. I'm going to take the Eagles. I think they're going to have some two-point conversion in there or something. So I'm going to go with 25-22 Eagles. And my player of the game, I'm going to go with the other guy who had a couple big plays last year for the Saints, not named Javon Hargrave on the line. I'm going to go with Josh Sweat. I think he's going to have a day.
Yeah, that's a great one. For me, look, I've been picking against the Saints a bunch this season. It's hard to rebound from losing. I mean, history will tell you it's hard to rebound from losing a Hall of Fame quarterback. And they've surprised me quite a bit throughout this season. These two losses over the course of the last couple of weeks are going to be detrimental, or could potentially be detrimental for their playoff hopes. And this game, if they drop this game, it's huge for them because, again, you're locked into this battle at the bottom of the NFC, which has just been an absolutely wild playoff battle so far, playoff race so far now, 11 weeks going into the 11th week of the season. And with Philly having these head-to-head wins over Carolina and Atlanta, you don't want to also drop the head-to-head to Philly, and you want that common opponent victory, that conference victory as well. So for me, excuse me, for the Saints, to me, this is an absolute must-win for them. So I'm going to show them a little vote of confidence. I'm going to take them in this game. These are the types of games that Sean Payton usually ends up coming up with something massively creative for, and then has that play call to where, like, if it works, he's a genius. If it doesn't work, it's a terrible decision, and then it works. You know what I mean? Like, you know how it goes in the NFL, right? What have you done for me? If it works, he's a genius. And this feels like this is one of those games where whatever it is that he calls up works, and he's a genius. Like last week, there was the flea flicker that didn't really work out. They got Mark Ingram back, who's like the GOAT when it comes to flea flickers. He's incredible. For whatever reason, if Mark Ingram's attached to a flea flicker, it just works. Last week, an example of that's not always the case. And so it didn't work out. This week, I think that they find whatever that is, right? That big turning point. And it could be as early as the opening drive. The Saints can score on their opening drive. That is a big time shift from what they've done so far this season. So with all of that, I will take the Saints in this one, but I do think that it's close. I've been sort of taking the score of 24-23. And I think it's that close. It's been that close for them over the course of the last couple of games. I'm going to cross my fingers on the fact that the Saints have been playing better away from home than they played at home, and that the Eagles have not won a game at home so far this season, nor have they won a game where they scored less than 30 points. And so if they can keep the Eagles at less than 30 points, and if they have them at home, then maybe that works out in their favor. Who knows, though? So we'll see how it all goes. So with that, the 30-point thing for me, the player of the game, if the Saints were to win this, is going to be Demario Davis. And because he becomes that leader of the defense that ends up limiting this team to less than 30 points. If that's the threshold, he has to be the difference maker there. I kind of wanted to go Malcolm Jenkins because I put in a bold prediction over at Canal Chronicles that Malcolm Jenkins will have an interception, a pass breakup, a tackle for a loss, and a sack in this game. But that was more for fun. That was more for fun, right? That's bold predictions. You're supposed to be bold, right?
Right.
So for me, the actual player of the game for me in this one has to be Demario Davis.
Love it. Love it. And like you said, that turning point, like I specifically remember that playoff game we had a couple years ago with the fake punt. Like there is going to be, there's going to be opportunities for turning points in this game for the Saints for sure. But Ross, I want to thank you so much for coming on here, giving your knowledge, giving your insight to us on the Saints so that we can be prepared for this game and just know what to watch for. And I just appreciate your, genuine personality and just coming on here and rock with me and Sanjay. I love having Sanjay on here with you guys interacting. I think your chemistry is just immaculate. So I appreciate you coming on here. And anything you want to say before we sign off and tell everyone where they can find you at?
Oh, man, look, just a big thank you to you for reaching out and having me back on the show, man. Like an absolute pleasure to be here with you. If there's anybody that's interested, you could follow on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. But the thing I want to say is thank you, and thanks so much for inviting me back. It was a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Hey, thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have a great one, Ross. And we'll see where both our teams are at Thanksgiving. So thank you all for watching. Run, Booby, run. If he's back this week, fly, Eagles, fly. And we will see y'all later. Peace out.